Hi, I'm Kira, and I'm an OpenSciEd teacher and facilitator, and I am excited to walk you through the last lesson of the Light and Matter unit, Lesson 8, where we will apply what we know about light and material interactions to explain a phenomenon that is similar to our music lesson video, but it's different in terms of materials that are interacting with the light. So let's get started. In lesson 7, we figured out that differences in light on either side of an object or material can cause us to see different things when we're looking at the same object or material, and that the brighter or more prominent an object appears, the more light that reaches our eyes from the object. In this lesson, we're wondering, why do we sometimes see different things when looking at the same object? This lesson is a 3-day lesson where we will do a little bit of investigation and putting pieces together, and this is also where we will give students an assessment. There is, like I said, some hands-on, so there's about 20 minutes of materials prep, but no devices and no videos for this particular lesson. We'll start out day 1 of this lesson by revisiting our final model from lesson 7 and identifying that the difference in light on both sides of the material is important. So we're going to investigate our box models one last time by making observations of the one-way mirror when there's more or less difference in light on both sides of the material. And then when we finish our investigation, we will agree that the greater the difference in light on both sides of the one-way mirror, the stronger the phenomenon. So we also find that some of our related phenomena that we shared showed regular glass behaving similarly to the one-way mirror. So we use our box model to test which light conditions cause the glass to act like a one-way mirror, and then students are encouraged to look for examples of this as home learning. On day 2, we'll discuss that home learning. We'll discuss the investigations that we did on day 1, and then we will draw conclusions about how light interacts with the materials differently to cause us to see different things. And then students will complete a written assessment where they will use our learning from the music lesson video and from our investigations on day 1 to explain a phenomenon where glass is behaving similarly to a one-way mirror. And then now that students have finished their assessment on day 2 and have explained a related phenomenon, we can celebrate. So we review our driving questions in small groups to see what we were able to answer as we worked through the unit. And then we're going to reflect on what we found challenging and rewarding about this unit. So what we figure out on day 1 is, again, that differences in light on either side of an object or material can cause us to see different things when we're looking at the same object or material. And on day 2, we will find that the brighter or more prominent an object appears, the more light that reaches our eyes from the object. And on day 3, we figured out a lot about how light interacts with certain materials and how those interactions affect what we see. All right, for our key moments, part 2 is the investigation to strengthen or weaken the phenomenon. So we remember from earlier lessons that sometimes the phenomenon of the one-way mirror was stronger when our light conditions were different. So we're going to use our box model and 2 flashlights to manipulate the amount of light in the box model to see when the phenomenon is more and less visible. And we figure out that when light on either side of the material is different, the phenomenon is stronger. So if we have bright light on one side and dark on the other, then that phenomenon is going to be stronger. For part 4 of this lesson, the teacher should point out that some of our related phenomena that was in our self-documentation collection came from like windows in our houses or our schools or outside buildings or in our cars, and the glass was acting similarly to a one-way mirror, but it doesn't use one-way mirror film. So we motivate this need to investigate. So we're going to change the material between the boxes of our box model to glass, and then we will test different light conditions on either side to see which one makes the glass appear most like a one-way mirror. So we see that the glass behaves similarly to the one-way mirror, and that the phenomenon is still strongest when there is a greater difference in light on both sides of the glass. On day 2, students will use their learning from the investigation with the glass between the boxes in our box model to explain on an assessment how glass can act like a one-way mirror when light conditions are just right. Students are going to have the opportunity to explain this phenomenon. It's kind of chunked throughout the assessment, but they can answer their explanation in a written format or in a pictorial representation, or they can use a combination of both of those to explain why the glass is acting like a one-way mirror. Okay, so there are some extension activities in this lesson that are included about scattering and specular reflection that make really great subplans. So once you finish this lesson, it may be something that you could revisit later in the form of a submaterial substitute. And then we also might want to think about shifting the window glare explanation from how the light interacts with the structures in the glass to how much light is reflected off of the objects into the viewer's eyes. So before this lesson, we've been saying that it's how the light interacts with the structures in the glass, so those impurities or the silvering. And in this case, since the glass does not have one-way mirror film on it, we want to focus more on that difference in light on either side. So then we might also consider modifying the assessment, maybe to include a phenomenon that is more local to our students, so we could utilize some of their self-documentation collection pictures, or find something in the building that you could use to kind of localize this phenomenon a little bit more. And we do have a word that we earn in this lesson. It is system. We've talked about systems multiple times throughout the unit. This time we think we really got it, so we're adding that to our word wall. We also encounter, if you are to use those extension activities, you may encounter the word scattering and specular reflection, but those are not going to happen in the regular meat of this lesson. Okay, and then poster management wise, we are going to refer back to our driving questions board on day 3 of the lesson. We're going to utilize our science ideas charts. Students probably can also gather some evidence and explanations from the consensus models throughout the unit, their progress trackers, all of that. And then the material that's created during this lesson is just our systems word wall card. All right, we've made it through the entire unit at this point, and I'm hoping that you enjoyed teaching this and learning with your students, and I wish you luck in future units. Thank you for spending some time with me.